Hello, and welcome to the GRACE podcast series. My name is Denise Brock, and I am the Operations Director for the Global Resource for Advancing Cancer Education, or GRACE. In this podcast series, we interview patients, advocates, and healthcare professionals to provide the most updated information for our community and to highlight important issues facing those dealing with a cancer diagnosis. We hope you find this information valuable. For questions or comments, please visit us at cancergrace.org.
Hi, and welcome to the GRACE Supportive Care webinar series. Today, we'll be talking about Chemobrain. Chemobrain is sort of an umbrella term which we use to refer to symptoms that patients with cancer can have, where they have trouble with their memory, with their attention span, with sort of day-to-day activities. It's sort of a poorly understood disease or a conglomeration of symptoms. And to chat about that more, we have Lysa Buonanno with us today. Lysa is many things. Among them, she's a patient with lung cancer herself, and she's been a tireless advocate for all patients with cancer. Thank you so much for joining us, Lysa.
Thank you so much for having me.
Lysa, can you tell us a little bit about your own life, about who you are, how you entered into advocacy, and then sort of branch out into Chemobrain and your own experience with that?
Absolutely. My diagnosis came at 40 years old. And prior to that, I've pretty much been a workaholic my whole life. I really love to stay busy and active outdoors. We live in the desert, but we have some great hiking trails here and a lake. My family has always been a priority. My number one favorite job in the world is just being a mom. So that's pretty much my life before cancer. And once I was diagnosed, I was not able to work full-time in my field anymore. I had a lot of physical disabilities or new challenges, I guess, that I had to deal with. And I jumped into advocacy because I thought, is this it? Like, is this my life now? I'm forced to retire at 40, which mentally was a really hard thing for me to get a grasp on. So being able to help other patients, number one, but also to kind of fulfill a purpose, to create something in my life that could give me something else to focus on and be able to help others.
Perfect. And we were talking just before we started recording about how in your cancer journey, if you will, we often find that physicians, the oncology care team, everybody perhaps is not as enthusiastic or as well informed about these supportive care topics, and Chemobrain being one of them. For our audience who's unaware, it's sort of a poorly understood disease. We don't really know exactly what causes it. Patients with cancer can have trouble with memory, with thinking, due to a variety of causes, which may be more perhaps medical or reversible in reason. So one can have an infection, one can have metastasis or spread of the cancer to the brain, one can have dehydration, electrolyte abnormalities. All of these can lead to symptoms that sort of resemble those with Chemobrain. But Chemobrain is this diagnosis of exclusion when we have patients who are either on chemotherapy or receiving another form of cancer therapy, such as radiation therapy or hormonal therapy. And either during treatment or after treatment, they continue to complain of sometimes very vague symptoms, simply saying, I don't feel like myself, I can't remember things, I feel like a ditz, my mind is like jelly. Can you tell us a little bit about if you've ever experienced this, or in your advocacy work, if you've experienced other patients telling you about this?
Absolutely. Like you said, I feel like it is very an under-addressed or under-recognized side effect from a lot of these treatments that we're on. And it's just kind of, when you do bring it up, you feel like, you're like, yes, we've heard of these side effects, but there's not really maybe a great way to treat that. And as especially a younger person, some of it you can kind of contribute to aging. I've been blessed to be on this journey for 8 years now, but I feel like it has gotten longer, or worse, I should say, the more treatments I've been on. And it's really difficult. Like you said, the memory effects is really, really hard for me. And I feel like I have to preface with speeches I give or new people I might be interacting with, I'm sorry, my memory's horrible. I have a really bad memory, or I have to have notes for everything. Forgive me, I'm not, ignoring you, but I have to read this as well, or you can't remember anything, and it's really frustrating.
Yeah, and Lysa, can you tell us a little bit when you first started having these symptoms, where say trouble with sort of simple calculations with math per se, or remembering that you have to buy these 6 items at the grocery store, which all of us sometimes experience even in our daily lives. For example, this morning I couldn't remember something really simple. Did you receive good advice on how to differentiate this from, say, normal aging, or just sleeping too little? What was your experience with your care when you started to develop these symptoms?
I really wasn't given any advice, honestly, on how to deal with it. It was talking with other survivors that have the same problems and said, this has worked for me, or have you tried this? And it's funny when we all get in a room together, because sometimes you stop mid-conversation and none of us can complete our sentences. So it makes it interesting.
And did you ever try any medications for this? And in your research that you do as an advocate and as a patient, are you aware of any FDA approved or over-the-counter medications that you or other patients may have tried for this Chemobrain?
I have not. No, I'm not aware of anything, but it's also not something that I pushed with my medical team.
I'm sure there's always plenty more to address at your appointments. I think that's the thing with these supportive care topics as well, that both patients, their caregivers, the oncology care team can have the best intentions, but there's usually so much to cover at every visit. So
absolutely.
Background, there are certain medications that have been investigated for improving memory, improving cognition, but none of them are really FDA approved for Chemobrain per se. All of these medications have their own sort of side effects, often can make you even more drowsy, which we know is not perfect for patients who are already experiencing a whole host of other physical and mental side effects. So we don't really have great medicinal treatments for this. Can you offer some tips, Lysa, to our audience about what you do in your day-to-day life to combat this?
Absolutely. Number one for me is utilizing a calendar. I mean, almost everybody has a smartphone. If it's not in my calendar, it probably won't happen. I have to put everything in there, and I look at it the night before for the next day to kind of, okay, this is what I have to plan for. And also really important for me is if I have a really busy day, especially maybe kind of a mentally challenging day where you have to do a lot of emails or planning something or conference calls, I have to do those earlier in the day for me. So you have to figure out what time frame you function best. Because sometimes by 3 p.m, my husband can be like, "What do you want for dinner?" And I'm like, "I can't make another single decision today. Like, pick something, So you have to figure out what time frame might work better for you, and maybe not overloading your schedule too much in one day has been really important to help me as well. And also sleep. It's something, everyone talks about how important sleep is, but I do feel like I have a much harder time focusing and putting thoughts together if I haven't gotten enough sleep. So that's huge for me as well.
Wow, so I'm just going to summarize some of those. So getting plenty of rest and sleep, so giving yourself the best opportunity to be at the peak of your mental sort of faculties. You said that you love to maintain a calendar, which is why we have this schedule on the calendar, and we sort of confirmed this recording a couple of times. And then you said having mental checklists and sort of deciding when you want to do things in the day if you find that you're more awake, more aware, better mentally in the morning, then prioritizing tasks for that. Something that patients have told me is that they love leaving sticky notes around the house. So simple things, reminders, whatever works for them. And then I'd just like you to tell us a little bit more about your experience with opening conversations with people who are, say, perhaps not as close to you. So you're at an advocacy meeting or you're at another meeting and people may perhaps not know that you're experiencing these symptoms. Can you give our audience a tip or two about how you open these conversations?
Yeah, there's times like you kind of know in the morning, even, doing your normal routine, if this is kind of a good mental day or not so great mental day. I have notes for everything, for speeches. I'm a chronic planner anyway, so that's always been my nature. But, just bullet points like, oh, I want to remember to touch on this and touch on that. But I have to have those with me because I feel like, you want to make sure you get certain points across, and certain audiences, are expecting, like this conversation, specific information. And I do feel like I kind of have to preface sometimes with, forgive me, my memory's horrible. I do have to write everything down. Or another great advocate once said, and I kind of stole this from her because it makes sense, but it also kind of makes people laugh, that I apologize, my memory's horrible, and my brain's been on a lot of really harsh drugs the last few years. And it's kind of like, oh yeah, I get it. She's not kind of ditzy, or, because I feel like sometimes people might think like, oh my gosh, this girl's a public speaker, she can't get her stuff together. But you want to make sure they understand from the viewpoint of, I guess, being able to take you seriously, as like a expert kind of on the field you're talking about. And I feel like sometimes there are times I can't even remember a specific word, where I'm like, I could picture the object in my mind and I just can't think of what that thing is called. And that's very frustrating for me. So I want for people to understand that, it's a memory issue, it's a focus issue. It's, not my intelligence, I guess.
I'm sure all of this information will be very, very helpful for our audience, Lysa. And I hope that when we re-record this, perhaps in 1 year for the 2020 Supportive Care Series, we'll have better treatments, more information. All of us are trying really hard to improve the lives of our patients, especially with these supportive care topics.
Well, I really appreciate your dedication to this as well, because like you said, it's something that I feel like we don't have enough support with. So thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Lysa, and see you next time.
Thank you again for joining us. This podcast was made possible by the generosity of sponsorship from our friends at Lilly, Novartis, and Takeda. Please like and follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Send us feedback, share your story, donate, and visit us for more information at cancergrace.org. Thank you for listening.